CSS, it is such a fun, maybe for many, or such a boring for others task in WooCommerce. And today I'm going to try to describe how WooCommerce CSS is applied to every website once you install the WooCommerce plugin. And after that, we're going to just do examples because, I mean, there are so many different CSS things that you might want to customize. So the more examples you watch during this live demo, and the more you can learn. Then you can, of course, do your requests for more, and later on we'll see more and more examples. So the very first thing that I want to cover today during this 45 minutes class is the files overview. Now, if you scroll down to the lesson notes, you will actually see that there are 2 or 3 different links for customization, from the official documentation of WooCommerce. And those will probably tell you how CSS is added to your website, to your WordPress website. And the way this is done is through a PHP function called enqueue. It's spelled E-N-Q-U-E-U-E, right? You will hear about this PHP function so many times because this is the one that is responsible to add CSS and jQuery and all these external codes that plugins usually add on top of your WordPress installation. So this is, this could be a little bit too advanced, but it doesn't matter. My goal is to teach you a little, some new things. So once we found out, and I would like you to actually check those 3 links out, you will know that if you go to the WooCommerce folder that you've previously downloaded on your computer, and I hope all of you guys do this on a regular basis because you need to access these files to understand what's inside. Well, if you go inside Assets, you will find a CSS folder and all the CSS files that WooCommerce is adding whenever you install the plugin on your WordPress installation. And in particular, you will see WooCommerce.css, WooCommerce layout.css, and WooCommerce small screen.css. Those are the 3 main front-end style sheets that WooCommerce adds when you install it. So for those of you who are more advanced, you would actually want to disable this CSS that WooCommerce adds and do your own thing. This is probably applying only if you have a high 5-figure budget available, because you want to redesign the whole thing. But overall, and usually, the way we customize WooCommerce is by just having a child theme, which after 10 lessons of Customize Woo, you probably guys should know that by now you definitely need a child theme. And customization for CSS is done through the child themes style.css file in a way that no matter next time you update your parent theme, that customization will not go away. So in my opinion, that's the best place to place, that's funny, to place your CSS. Forget, if possible, about the theme options. If it has a custom.css box, do not use that. The likes of Divi, for example, have a theme options panel where you can put your custom CSS. Why I suggest not to use that? Because it's hard to find. And you want to keep all your customization in one place, which is the child theme. So no theme options, and definitely do not customize the parent theme, the CSS, because that wouldn't make any sense. And fourth thing, sometimes the WordPress customizer The one that you can access if you go to your website, just give me a second, and then you have a customize there. From there, you can actually override some CSS, mostly in relation to colors, in relation to fonts. It depends on a team and it depends on other reasons. But if I had to suggest customizer versus theme option versus parent style.css versus child theme style.css, these, which is the child theme style.css, will be the place where you put all your CSS customization. Nowhere else, just because you want everything in one single place to know exactly what's going on. All right, having said that, I want to start making a little example with Google Chrome. If you guys are using Firefox, you have a very good equivalent in Firebug. But if you right-click anywhere on the screen, say, for example, right-click on the shop string and say inspect, the inspect element section in Google Chrome. And this inspect element will tell me the shop, which is an H1, has certain CSS that gets applied to it. And that CSS, you will see, is in slightly, I don't know if you can see with the zoom that I have right now, but you see the H1 has a kind of a black color, while H2, H3, H4, they have kind of grayed out color. Well, this is the rule that is applying to the shop heading, which is H1 color for A4C51, okay? Also, font size, font weight, margin, clear body. There are a lot of CSS rules that get applied to this little string. So the way to understand how to override CSS is by actually seeing first what it's available, what gets applied. And from the right-hand side, you can actually see who is responsible to add that CSS. For example, in here, it says it's the index that is applying the color. When you have index, it means the customizer. Otherwise, who is applying the font size is the style.css of the main parent theme. You can see here it's very small, but if you hover onto these little strings, you will actually find out who is responsible to add that particular CSS to the WooCommerce shop. Okay, so that's the very first thing that you want to know in relation to cascading style sheets. That's what CSS stands for, cascading style sheets. The reason why it says cascading is because the order in which these style sheets are displayed here defines the winner. So the higher it is the CSS, and the more likely that is going to be applied to the shop string. For example, this color 484C51 will win above the color 131315 because the index is called after, or in the inspect element is shown first, as opposed to the Storefront, which is the theme I use, style.css standard file. So your goal is to get something up here. If you can't, and you say color blue, that's probably a simulation, and I actually recommend you to use inspect element to do all the simulation that you want to do before applying the changes to your site. This is so handy. But your goal is to have something to show above the higher or the highest style sheet that displays that. Otherwise, it will not override. Okay, so this will be helpful later. It's helpful when you have those unusual and those very boring importance in the CSS. And you say, how on earth do we override that? Well, your goal is to get something on top of important. And the only way to beat an important is by using another important. That's why it is such a bad practice. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time with this. My goal was to show you what the project management is, which is take a look at what's going on in the CSS through inspect element in Chrome or Firebug in Firefox. Go and customize. Right. I want to start with examples, otherwise you're going to get bored and otherwise we're going to fall asleep. So let's do as many examples as possible. Now, there is one very good example in the video notes that says disable WooCommerce CSS. If you want, as I said earlier on, you can. If you don't want to, then we're going to do simple examples right now. And we'll see how CSS is done. Okay, so first of all, what I want to do is go into my FTP, or one of you, this is how helpful teaching classes is, because I'm actually learning from students as well. So I've installed in my Notepad++, I've installed a plugin called NPP FTP, and that's funny, which is immediately connecting to my FTP, and I can open files from the inside of Notepad++ and move them, upload them, update them very, very quickly. So I'm going to open my WordPress site, WP content, hopefully opens, Teams, and as you see, I have a Storefront Business Bloomer child team, and the parent is Storefront, of course. So I open the Storefront Business Bloomer, and this has a style.css that I'm about to open. And as you see, it's completely empty. This means that right now, the website that you see here is a basic, fresh, new install of the Storefront theme. So our goal is to customize the colors, the fonts, the display, maybe the responsive behavior, do the better. And there are some things that I do on a very regular basis is colors. Always start with colors because it's the easiest thing to do. Sometimes you have a logo. And let's say our logo is red. Well, your goal would be to make that red experience consistent throughout the website. So for example, you want to change the headings in red, you want to change the buttons in red. The more, the less colors you use, the better. And the more consistency you have together with the logo colors, and the happier the user is going to be, basically, because they can identify those colors throughout the website pages. So let's imagine that my logo is red. For example, it's the YouTube play button. Let's use that red. And what I want to do is change the color of all the headings and change the colors of all the buttons to red. What I do is I right-click on the heading, inspect. I'm going to take a look at who is applying the most important, the most valuable rule in relation to color, and it is this call, H1, H2, H3, H4, 5, 6, color, whatever. So I take the whole thing. You can actually drag and drop and copy the whole thing. You copy, you go to your Notepad, and you paste it, right? Right now, nothing is going to happen because the color is the same. What I want to do is say color red. Okay, I save, and Notepad FTP already sent the file back to the site, hopefully. So I'm going to refresh for a little second and see if anything is going to happen. Wow, magic has happened, right? So all the headings now, including H1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, have color red. This might not be the best red shade ever, but I just want to show you how easy it is. Second thing, buttons. Add to cart buttons. I right-click on that, inspect element, find out that the rule is, let me just re-inspect element for a second. The rule is button, hover, input, blah, blah, blah. There are so many different elements that get this purple color from WooCommerce. Actually, not even. It's coming from the customizer. So I take the whole thing. Don't forget to include all these elements, because if they're doing it, then you should do it too. It makes sense to have this color, for example, applied to all the other elements of the site. So you just copy the whole lot. You go to FTP once again, you paste, and this time you want to say color red. Oops. And you want to say color red, and you want to say color red. I save. You should send it back to the site. And if I refresh now, fingers crossed, of the buttons should be changing to red. It has not, and I'm actually really happy, right? So what happened? I right-clicked. I right-clicked, right? And what happened? The inspect element hover. The hover is when you onto a button. Is defining the behavior of what happens when you hover, right? This should be pretty simple to yourselves, but it might happen that you never heard that before, and I hope that's totally fine with you. So what I did, I actually selected the wrong elements. I've applied my red to the hover behavior and not to the normal behavior. Now, don't ask me why this is telling me, this is giving me the hover. I just need to go to another place, take another button that I'm not hovering currently, and find out this is the actual correct selector. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to go to my notepad, paste the correct selectors. This time I'm going to do red. I'm going to do red. And color, I'm going to do, for example, EEE 60s. Okay, so I'm going to save. I'm going to, and hopefully this time the standard buttons have become red with color. This is fantastic. Now, let's say that you are so happy to use important, which I guarantee you it'll make your life so difficult. So never use it. If you're using it, there is something wrong with either the plugin or the theme you've purchased or with your CSS skills. So important is something that you never want to use, and I'll show you the proof right now. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go to the site and refresh. This time, the background color of the buttons have gone with important. If I hover, which I'm trying to do right now, the color is not changing. The hover is not calling, is not applying its behavior because I've said important. When you put important, nothing can ever override that behavior. So you have to be super careful if you put important on links, on buttons, on other colors, on layouts, because once that's done, nothing can change it. No matter whether you're on the responsive side, you're on a different page, that important will win all the time. So rule number one, never use important unless strictly necessary. So right now, I'm going to remove this, save, and preserve the hover effect now that the important is gone. So next task is applying some effect to the hover, right? Because I still don't like that purple. Let's say I want to make it a little bit, a different shade of red, but definitely not purple. How on earth do you inspect elements on the hover? Well, first of all, you right-click on the button. And the second thing that you do is you right-click on the element itself. So you see here in the code, and there is a little option called hover. When you click on that, forcing that element to take the hover, and you can actually take a look at what elements and what CSS it has. So that's a little trick. You can actually, it's like if you're stopping, if you're freezing that button on hover mode or that link on over mode, it's the exact same thing. You can actually force by right-clicking and say hover, and you can actually find out what the code for that hover button is. So this time I'm going to take it and put it in my style.css, so the child theme. Hopefully you can see everything here. Now, I don't want the hover to change background. I don't want the hover to change border or color. I just want to apply an opacity, for example. So I want to make the button a little bit lighter, say 0.8. I don't want to change color. I don't want to change font. I'm just going to save this, and I'm going to refresh the page and see if the purple has gone. If instead I get an opacity effect on the shop page. So I'm going to hover, and the purple is still there. And I actually love this because we have to understand that we have to troubleshoot why our code didn't work out. So what you do, once again, you right-click on the same button, you force, by right-clicking on this highlighted element, you force hover. And then on the right-hand side, you go and take a look at what's going on. Our opacity is there, 0.8. The problem is that there is somewhere else, this background color, this border color, and this color are still happening. You see what I'm saying? We haven't actually reset whatever features or whatever CSS was there already. So I'm going to take those three, right? And this time, I'm going to go here. Sorry, I'm not going to take those three. I'm just going to take the one that we had before, because I don't want them to change. I just want to apply opacity, but you still have to redefine those three colors. Otherwise, the standard purple will apply. So I'm going to save. I know this might be a little bit complicated for some of you, but you can pause this video. You can rewatch it how many times you like. You can play with it. That's my goal. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to hover. And you see now, they don't become purple. They just become a little bit opaque. So this is mission accomplished. All right. So we've changed the headings. We've changed the buttons. Let's move on to the single product page, because that could be helpful as well. The single product page, we expect that the button is red as well. Why hasn't changed? So it looks like the shop, the loop buttons have changed into red, but these haven't. Maybe it's the team, maybe it's WooCommerce itself that has different settings for different buttons. So our goal is to inspect these elements find out if there are other rules, this kind of a gray color, and indeed, here they are. They're called button, alt, select, like an alternative. What I do is I take these whole declaration, I copy, I go back to my FTP, sorry, Notepad, and I add these declarations to the ones that I had before, after a comma. Okay, I'm now gonna save, and let's see if that single product page button is now become red with red border and white font, and it has. On hover, it's black. So once again, right click, inspect element, right click, force the hover. What's going on with the hover? I take all those elements, copy Notepad, and I add them after a comma to the ones that I added to the shop page. Save. I go to the single product page, save again. Now, if I hover onto the button, I should get still red, just a little bit of opacity applied to it. I hope it's all clear so far. And maybe, it could be too, it could be too beginner level for many. It doesn't matter. You can actually learn advanced CSS by looking at what I'm doing right now. So we've changed the colors. Let's try to change the fonts. I don't like the font that this team is applying to, product titles, right? So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I inspect to see who is generating the font family. I keep scrolling down, Body, button, input, select, and text area are using Source Sans Pro font. I want to change these to another Google font. So just go to Google Fonts. And for example, I want to pick font, Source Sans Pro, and I want this font to be, for example, a display font. So I'm just refining here, and I want to use, I like this one, Lobster 2. So what I do is I add it to my fonts, one family, I click on it. This will give me the import code that I need to add to my CSS. So I take import, I go to my CSS, to the very top of it, and here is my other suggestion. What you want to do is creating as many comments as possible. So right now, we're going to define typography, okay? And what you want to comment in that CSS is exactly what the CSS is going to be about. So it's going to be import, whatever Google gave us, then color of the headings. After that, we have instead WooCommerce buttons, right? So why are we doing this? Because we want to make sure that whenever we have a huge CSS file, which you will, you actually know where to find. For example, if you're in the header, if you're in the footer, if you're talking about typography, which there is a, a typo, and it's easier to find things. So use comments if possible, use dates or change logs, so at least you know what you've done. Anyway, I've added the font. Now I need to apply the font to the headings. How do I do? Just apply font family, Lobster 2, which I'm going to copy and paste and add to my headings here. Save. Now let's see if my website has now become difficult to read. I'm going to refresh. And there you go. So the headings now are using the Lobster 2 Google font. How much was that? 2 lines of codes. Very, very simple. And we've already done a very, very nice, customization. It's much more consistent. If the logo was red, it's a little bit girly if you want. There are a lot of things you can do with one line of CSS. So we've done the fonts, we've done the colors, we've done the hover, we've done the headings. Now, let's move on to layouts and to floating elements. Now, in Storefront, for some reason, the cart button is floating to the right. And I don't like it. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So my goal would be, how do I make it float to the left? Well, what do? Right-click, inspect element. Oh, I think I just clicked on it instead. Sorry. Oh, that's good, actually, because I added to cart, and I have this green, awful color, sorry, Storefront, which I have to change as well. I have to make consistent to my red, for example, or to my black, or to whatever other secondary color you have. Right-click and go and find out where that green is coming from, which is WooCommerce error, WooCommerce info, WooCommerce message, reviews, comments, background color, green. You see it here. So you can do 2 things. You can either click on the little color and play. For example, I want red. Any good? Nah. I want to go to the other side, to red, and make it a little bit more my own red. Right. Now looks really, really nice. You see it 0000. So this is not changing. This is only simulating, right? So what I'm going to do is, now that I've changed it, I take that CSS, I go to my notepad, I start with a comment saying, changing now the WooCommerce errors, error, and close comments, paste my CSS. Don't forget to remove padding and margin. You don't need that. You can stay like that. And don't forget to close parentheses. Save. And now let's try to save this and see if the red is not. Right-click, inspect element. Where is my red? Nowhere. So we're going to go back, first of all, to the notepad and take a look if there is something wrong with my CSS. WooCommerce error, WooCommerce info, WooCommerce message, WooCommerce reviews, no comments, background color. It looks all good. So it's strange that it's not applying. So first of all, I'm going to save again. You never know, there might be some cache, there might be something wrong with it. You might need to re-add a product to cart, for example, to refresh the fragments, they're called in WooCommerce. So we're just going to give it a go. I'm just going to click again. This is not working. This is a great example. These are the times that you lose hours on figuring things out. These are the times that you go mad at understanding why CSS is not applying. So, once again, we have to troubleshoot. Take a look, and there is nothing showing any red in the CSS. If it's not showing there, you've got 2 problems. Either you have a cache plugin that is not allowing you to add it, or there is an error in your CSS. So I'm going to go back to my notepad and see if I've done something crazy. Or also, another thing that you can do is you take the whole string and you put it first. What this means is that's definitely going to be applied. If there is an error in the other piece of code, it's not going to affect whatever you've done here. Okay? So I'm going to save. This has been uploaded to the server. I'm going to try refresh. Red. I leave you this as a task for you to go and troubleshoot what I've done wrong, because the way you learn CSS is by making mistakes or having problems like this, that you have to spend 10 hours and then you realize it was a silly, stupid thing. So I wish I have more time to troubleshoot this, but maybe we're going to leave it out for the questions and answer later on. So we've tried to change this. We want to now make this button float to the left. Right-click. You will see that something is applying the float right. I'm going to take the whole thing. I'm going to go to my notepad into the buttons section. I'm going to paste that, but this time I'm going to say left. Save. And I'm going to refresh. Now this page might not work out for some reason. Hasn't, right? So a moment. I right click once again, the float right. I don't see the float left anywhere. This is definitely a cache problem. You've applied 2 rules and neither work. So what you can do is when the inspect element is open, you can right click on the refresh instead of left click. Right click and say empty cache and hard reload. This is Google Chrome. I'm sure you can find an equivalent in Firefox if you're using Firefox. But these could help us fix it. Sometimes it doesn't. The server is just being slow, and that's what's happening. Guaranteed that in 5 minutes time, this will work out automatically the same way the previous CSS applied straight away. So you see the low, there is something, there is something wrong there, but hey, now floating to the left. Hey, the message is now red. So I just gave you a little tip. This is not the plugin cache. This is not the hosting cache. This is the Google Chrome cache. So when the inspect element is open and your CSS is not working, always try right-click, empty cache, and hard reload. That will possibly help you finally seeing your correct CSS. So I think this is a great tip that not many people actually know. And I know that we've only 3 minutes left for the class. I want to just do a little bit of responsive before we close and move on to the prizes. So I have a little app in Chrome that resizes my window to whatever I want. For example, iPhones. I just click on iPhones and I will see my site behaving. If that gives me a little bit of time with the server going slow and my website and my laptop loading slow, at some stage, this will start behaving like a iPhone. So let me see if I do it again. Okay, this is a tablet and this is an iPhone. Finally, there are a lot of things that I might not like. For example, the sale label is up there. The image is huge. The title is down there. Difficult to see this on a phone. This is aligned to the center, but this is aligned to the left. There are a lot of inconsistencies, right, that you want to fix within your responsive site, okay? So what you do is, first of all, and as usual, you right-click and inspect. Now, whenever you're in phone view, the inspect element is going to be really small. You can actually move it away from the window by going to the little 3 dots and say undock. When you undock, it's going to come out and you can have it beside if you want. So that's easier for your CSS and for your CSS customization. So you can right-click again, inspect, and you will highlight our image. Our image is 600 by 600. This is something that we don't want to happen on a phone, for example, or you might not want to have on your client side. It doesn't matter. So what do you do? Technically, you would probably take a look at what's giving such image its 100% height and then remove it. The problem is that I'm figuring out right now, there is nothing related to WooCommerce, and there is nothing related to responsive. I'm fine with the image being 100%, on bigger screens, or I'm fine with the behavior that image has on bigger screens. I just want to that on smaller screens is not 100%. So what do I do? First of all, you go to the top of the page and you have to select something that has the WooCommerce pages you want to apply this to, right? So this is a single post, and in particular, it's a single product page. So you take that single product because you want to do this change only to single product pages. So comment, you say, oops, the other way around. I say WooCommerce single product pages. I'll just do a little abbreviation. Single product, it's a class, so it takes the dot. Then I want to move on to, we're trying to target this image. Okay, so this is the single product. After that, you may want to choose something like the product, right? Because you don't want to apply these to the related products, just to the image that belongs to the product. All right. So you have to look for something that applied just to that part of the page, and this would be the, for example, product. So I'm going to add this dot product here to try and targeting just the main image of the single product page. And after that, I can possibly say images, because that's the one that controls the images on the single product page, and then img. That doesn't take dots or hashes or anything. It's just on its own. All right. So what I want to do is, I don't know. So I'm just going to go and simulate it. Select element, go to the very top where it says element style and say max width. I don't know, 60%. And there you go. Now it's showing you how it will look like. Take that piece of code and paste onto your notepad, save, refresh. And hopefully it has become fit. Okay? If this is not applying, fantastic. I love doing errors. Right click, take a look at what's going on. Where is my max width 60%? Not there whatsoever. So probably this website is going crazy and just have to empty cache and reload just to make sure that the CSS is happening. Chrome is giving me a problem, but it happens. So small. And everyone's happy. The problem is that this is now applied. And if you see this code, you will see this is applied to every device. Big screens, small screens, iPhones, iPads, whatever. So you have to start doing some responsive, which always starts with @media. I'm just going to leave some room. And then you want to say something like, I'm just going to little example. So if you don't know how to write CSS, just take a look at what happens on a little screen. So sometimes things get applied to, we start with @media. I'm sure you're going to find this somewhere. Remember, responsive always wins above almost everything based on the screen size. We found something. Look, this media max width 568 call for is giving different margins. So just for making it easy, I'm just going to select the whole thing. Sorry, because it's easier. I'm going to go to Notepad, delete this. And now I'm just going to copy this. Now, when you do responsive, you have two rules. It has to start with @media. You have to give a max width, a min width, something, or a range. All right? So min width and max width. So in between that range. And you have to have open parentheses and close parentheses. You see how Notepad is telling me starts here, ends there. So you have 4. You have 1, you have the element, close the element, and close the media. Never, ever forget that, because responsive is a pain, mostly if you forget these 2 parentheses. I'm going to save, and hopefully, when I go and refresh, and hope that this time the Google Chrome cache is not messing with me, but and rule will only be applied to screens that are smaller than 568. And this little app that I have actually tells me the size of the screen while I change it. There on the right-hand side, top right-hand side, it says 523, 548, 563, blah, blah, blah. It'll change at some stage, and it should apply. Now, according to this, even the smaller images are applying. So I'm going to empty cache and reload. It's going to give you a solution. Excellent.